Welcome to G-Man Gaming and Reviews. Today's video is going to be another Total War Warhammer 3 guide to the Vampire Coast. But this video is going to be all about Vampire Coast army composition and battle tactics for the mid-game. So at this point you've moved past beyond the early game. And now you're at the mid-game, and so your army composition is going to change quite a bit. For me, so if you were following my previous guide, you would have unlocked the what's it called? This tier here, the cannons tier. What's it called? That's going to the. You would have unlocked the bombards, right? The bombards line, and hopefully you would have also gotten up to level 3 of the gun ports line. So at this point, the army composition. Now, I am going to say that the idea for using hand cannons came to me from Colonel Damder's videos, for one of his videos. Early on, I didn't actually think this unit was very useful, but after watching one of his videos, if you're watching this video, you obviously know who he is. So I just thought I would give that shout out to, that's where I got the idea for using the hand cannons. Because before I thought that they were a bit of a trash unit because they have very low range. But they are a very good frontline. So we're going to talk about how to use, what units are good in the mid game, how you actually use them in battle. We're going to talk about the ideal frontline and gunnery mob formations, positioning artillery for safety, using depth guard and crab monsters to anchor the flanks, and hero combos and synergy, right? So, you can see here I'm playing as Aranessa, and I have my army composition here. So I've got 5, I'm just going to call them hand cannons up front. These units are really good up close and a really good ranged unit for up close and for getting close, right? They do significant amount of damage to anything near them, which makes them a very good frontline for shredding units that are trying to get close. We've also got a unit of 6 units of deck gunners. These are your premier ranged infantry. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with the deck gunners is, like with all gun factions, you need to, the topography that you're playing on really matters, as you'll see next in the playthrough where I show you a particular battle against the dwarf, I can't remember his name, Black Buckhorn. Yeah, Buckthorn. Well, I'll show you a playthrough against him and his very powerful dwarf army and how the Vampire Coast can beat them because of their unique army composition. So we're going to talk about the ideal frontline and gunnery mob formations, positioning for artillery safety, using depth guard and crab monsters to anchor the flanks, and hero combos and synergy. Examples: gunnery white ammo recharge. Right? As I said, we've got our composition of, I should normally have 6 hand cannons, but I've still got the rotting Prometheans that I started off with. These are a pretty good flanking unit to defend your flanks. They've got a pretty decent speed, and they've got a very high armor and armor piercing attacks. So they are really good as a counter army. So one thing that you want to keep in mind when playing with the Vampire Coast is that even though your ranged units are the most powerful, you still need to have units that can counter range, because there are going to be enemy armies that are going to get close to your armies, especially if the enemy, like for instance, if we look further up here, I'm dealing with the Bretonnians, right, in a war, right? Bretonnian armies with a lot of knights can cause a lot of problems, because they can close the distance very quickly, and they tend to take a lot of knights, right? So you need to have units that can counter your enemy. You need to have units that can counter them, right? So even though your army can put out a lot of firepower, you are going to get enemy units closing the distance, and you'll need to have counter flank units to attack them, right? So rotting Prometheans are good because they have very high armor and they've got a pretty decent speed. So one of the good things about, if you're going down as you can see here, I've unlocked the cannons, tree, and I've also gotten up to level 3 of gun ports to get access to the hand cannons, right? But if you go to level 4, you get Rotting Promethean gunnery mobs. And from what I've seen, these are pretty much identical to the Rotting Prometheans that you get here, except they have guns. So they're a very good counter unit. They can fire while moving. And as you can see here, they've got the defender stat. So basically, they're really good at defending, right? So you are going to need maybe a unit or two, especially combined with your legendary lord or later on your artillery monsters to counter the enemy when they close the distance. But yeah, so that's going to be your army composition. So you've got your 5 or 6 hand cannons, your deck gunners, 2 Carronades for dealing with anti-large. These are probably going to be replaced later on with artillery monsters, and a Queen Bess and Mortar. As you can see here, the Mortar is quite high level. And then I've got the 2 Gunnery Wights. So the Gunnery Wights have got their Enchanted Ballistic skill unlock. I normally keep one of the Gunnery Wights with the artillery, because the extra reload speed and accuracy is really good. But now that the Queen Bess is actually pretty accurate as well, but it's just the extra accuracy is good, and some cannons to take rid of anything that's anti-large or for dealing with enemy artillery. The cannons have a very long range of 450, so they're really good for dealing with artillery and monsters. The Queen Bess is pretty much useful against everything, even though it is anti-infantry. That being said, it doesn't only have a low ammunition of 28, but you can use the Gunnery Wights to give it more ammunition. So that's one thing that's really good about it. In Colonel Damder's video, he had 2 Queen Besses. I still don't know how he had them. I would like to get 2 of them, but I haven't been able to get them. Cool. Now we're going to talk about... So as you unlock your Horde, you're going to get access to the heroes. So you've got the heroes that you've got access to are the Mongol Haunter, which is basically going to be used for assassination. Gunnery Wights, which are really useful for improving your... They're basically engineers. And then you've got your Vampire Fleet Captains that are your spellcasters. So I can actually recruit 2 of these. I think I discussed the laws in the previous... Oh, no, I haven't discussed the laws yet. I will discuss those separately in a previous video, but as you can see here, the Law of Vampires is really good for undead. Deep is good against everything and buffs artillery range and buffs ranged units. And Death is really good for like, buffing troops in combat, in melee. So now we're going to move on to a battle composition where I'm going to show you all the stuff that I showed you in the previous video, but some more so in a playthrough, so you can actually see all the stuff that I'm putting into play. So we're going to move to that playthrough now. Alright, I thought I would show you this particular battle because it was a pretty good play style to demonstrate the mid to late game composition that you would have with your Vampire Coast. So this is on hard difficulty, not bragging, but against a pretty elite army. The only units in the enemy army that aren't elite are pretty much these giant slayers. Everything else, you got Iron Breakers, you've got Longbeards, you got Iron Drakes, you've got Thunderers, and you've got Organ Cannons. So this is a pretty elite army. Normally this Dwarf Lord, this Pirate Lord, Black Buckthorn, is normally pretty difficult. And you can see here that even with reinforcements, this is a valiant defeat. But actually what you'll see is I'm really not going to be making too much use of the reinforcements. This main army should be able to defeat them. So this is one of the interesting things about the Vampire Coast, is that there are certain armies that aren't as difficult for them, but other armies are more difficult for them. So you're going to see like sort of a late game composition where I've got my my hand cannons and some deck gunners. And then you've got my composition that I had before in the previous video. So we will show you that in action. Now, normally what you would want to have would be a line of deck gunners behind these hand cannons. But unfortunately, because of this particular map and our deployment zone, there's nowhere we can really go. But it is mostly flat land. So we'll have to make use of it. So what we're going to do is the hand cannons are really good at close range. We're going to deploy them in a staggered line with holes for the deck gunners. Not ideal, but... Alright, so let's deploy them. So we'll put our first unit there. A unit of deck gunners there. A unit of deck gunners on the outside. Unfortunately, it would have been better to have had them... So as you can see here, so what we do is we're having lines through where the deck gunners can actually go through, shoot through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to space them out quite a bit because I want the deck gunners to have a clear line of sight. We've got 2 gunnery rights in this army. So we will move these guys here. Let's move these... Alright. So we can shoot through there. We've got another unit of deck gunners. We're going to take our artillery and put it back. And so what we're doing is we're taking this gunnery white here with the flaming, with the banner of internal flame, putting him there because I want him buffing the cannons and the Queen Bess and the mortar Right, so we're going to keep our Aranessa next to our artillery to make sure that she protects them. And we should have more deck gunners. Yep, so we'll put another unit of deck gunners here. Some hand cannons here. Another unit of deck gunners here. And then some hand cannons here. And we'll put our gunnery white on this side to buff these units. Oh, we've got another unit of hand cannons. Not ideal, but we will put them on this side. Just simply put so that we can protect this flank. And we've got our rotting Promethean units on this side to plug the hole if the enemy tries to come at them. And our reinforcements of spearmen. Not going to be useful in this battle, but still. Alright, so let us go ahead and... Oh, first thing that we're going to do is take them out of skirmish mode and put them into guard mode. And the same thing with the artillery. You always want to put your artillery in guard mode because you don't want them trying to run after an enemy to shoot at them. Yep. And we've got our deck gunners... Keep them back. I normally only have 1 unit of flyers just so to see over hills, which isn't going to be useful in this battle. And we keep Aranessa close in order to defend the artillery. Alright. So they're going to immediately come at me. And if we have a look who we got, hammerers, iron breakers, longbeards, iron breakers, and then we've got the slayers on the side. The slayers are fast moving, but I'm not really worried about them because they don't have any armor. It's these units here that are just so tough. But luckily we've got 2 armor busting abilities. Cool. So we're going to pause the map. This one's good against armor. So, we're going to put this one here. And then it should go off by the time that they get in there. Bang, we got ourselves some... Cool. And we've got another ability. We'll do the same thing. As you can see, we're already doing damage to them. We've got our reinforcements on the way. And we've got our deck gunners that have got the line of sight. This topography is very flat. Okay. So they're in range for the big mortars. As you can see there, the Queen Bess did that. It reduced an entire unit of iron breakers almost to death. So what we're going to do with the cannons is... So we've taken out that unit of iron breakers almost completely. Next we're going to focus on the hammers. Now, are we in mortar range? No, we're not in mortar range yet. Yep, so we're doing damage. Iron breakers are almost on their way out, so... Bang. Finished. Cannons are doing damage. Alright, so now what we're going to do is... Let's have a look. So I'm going to use my cannons to go after these units. I should be using them to go after the organ guns, but it's the melee stuff that's really dangerous. So we're going to pop enchanted ballistics with this unit, with this lord. And as you can see, they've all been buffed. And it comes down, and it's completely, as you can see here, even a high-level unit, it's completely wiping them out. Alright, let's switch to 90-second cooldown. Okay, we've got our abilities. Alright. Let's use it on these ones. Okay, we'll push it a little bit down. Come on. Yes! Slayers are starting to get in front. I'm not too worried about them. They're unbreakable, but it's these heavily armored units that we need to worry about. Alright. That wasn't good. Okay, so we got scurvy dogs. We'll pull them back. Actually, we'll have the scurvy dogs run up there. We will have these guys shore up this flank. Have them sit behind. Actually, not that I'm going to need it, but we'll have these guys sit here. Actually, we'll have these guys move here. And these ones move here. Dwarfs are slow. Oh, what's happening? Ooh, no, don't try to shoot them. Go back. Okay, we need to pull her back immediately. So you can see here that normally an army that would be very difficult for other factions to deal with, the Vampire Coast is actually really useful. Okay, I don't care if I lose these scurvy dogs, but what I want to do is get them around and have them charge into the organ gun. Now, okay, they're in range. Yep, okay, let's use enchanted ballistics. Alright, so we got another unit here. And we've got our scurvy dogs charging into the organ guns and taking them out. And the advantage of what that's done is the AI is now sending units back to defend the organ guns, which are now taken out. And so we can send these forward. And we've got our hand cannons here doing damage. Alright, so what we're going to do here is pull our troops in there. Okay, we need to pull these guys in. Let's have them... No. Let's have them... Nope. No. How do we do it? Yeah, do that. I'm gonna lose my deck gunners, but oh well. Come on. Take him out. Okay. Normally shouldn't do this, but... So Aranessa is... Yep, okay, they're coming in. No, charge. Where are you guys going? Okay, that wasn't good positioning on my additional troops, but I didn't want them to... Okay, so that's the enemy lord. Okay, we'll send these to deal with the iron breakers. No. Take them on. Okay, we've got our units. Alright. We need to deal with the Thunderers. Let's drop this in here. Okay. Okay, thank you, Scurvy Dogs. Yeah, even though you got taken out, you guys are expendable.
Captain.
Okay, I think we can use the artillery. Okay, we're going to give our Queen Bess some more ammunition. Nice. Okay, so... Not the best play, but As you can see, that Queen Bess is just doing damage. And these Slayers are winded and unbreakable. Alright, so let's pop this so he can stop him moving. I think they're dead. Okay, we need to take out these Slayers. Not that they're a big threat, but we need to take them out. Let's put more ammunition on the Queen Bess. Now, one thing that I didn't do in this game was make use of my engineers, my gunnery wights, because they have a lot of abilities to use magic missiles. But this is just to give you an idea of late game composition. Okay, we're gonna stop our tanks from shooting, our artillery from shooting, because it's damaging our own troops. And that was a basic guide to mid to late game compositions. Hand cannon frontline with deck gunners behind. So like I said, generally what you want to do is have them in a line. So if you got like the deck gunners behind on higher ground, but unfortunately I didn't have higher ground for this one. So I needed to make it work. But yeah, moving on. So as you saw in that battle, you can see how the Vampire Coast can turn a valiant defeat into a decisive victory with the right composition. So that's one of the things that makes the Vampire Coast so interesting, is that they play completely different, because they're the only faction in the game, apart from maybe the Dwarfs. But the Dwarfs have really good melee infantry. They're the only faction in the game that has really strong ranged units, but weakish melee units. Right? So it forces you to play them in a certain way in order to make them work. But that's one of the things that makes them so interesting, is how and different. For instance, the Dwarfs are normally a faction that early on you don't want to tangle with. Like Black Buckthorn is normally not a lord that you want to deal with. Dwarf units in general have really high armor, and they have really good ranged as well, and organ cannons are really good. So you see how the Vampire Coast, with the fact that they've got like all these firepower units, can turn the dwarven armies into splinters, but against other armies they may struggle because those armies can close the distance too quickly. In this video, we covered having the ideal frontline and gunnery mob formations. We covered positioning for artillery safety. We covered using depth guard and crab monsters to anchor the flanks. I didn't really talk about the depth guard too much, but the depth guard do have regeneration. So that's one thing that is very useful for them. So when you upgrade your ship to tier 4, you can recruit depth guard, and 90 armor and regeneration is actually, it's pretty decent, but they're more of a defensive unit in the game, which is interesting. Like I said, your melee units are more meant to defend you. In another video, I probably will talk about ogres that Aranessa has access to. But yeah, so you could see how in the playthrough, how we used our crab monsters to anchor the flanks as well as Aranessa. You saw how we used the gunnery wights to power up our artillery. One thing that I didn't do better in the battle with the Gunnery Wights was make use of their bomb abilities. So that's one thing that you should do. Once the battle has been engaged, you should be trying to get at least one Gunnery Wight to get into the flanks of the enemy to use their bomb abilities, right? The Gunnery Wights have really good ranged attacks. So if you're not using them to do that, you're wasting them. And because they have, even though they're a ranged hero, because they have high armor, they can actually be okay in melee, but they're not necessarily super easy to take out. That doesn't mean that they'll survive against anything that's really dangerous in melee, but because they got really high armor, they are a lot more survivable than you might think. We didn't cover using magic in this particular battle, but the thing is one of the things that's different about the Vampire Coast is that because most of your units are ranged, one of the things that I tend to do with magic is that I tend to like to use hex magic or... So let's have a look at the spells. So I'll show you what I mean. So if we go Law of Death, right? So what I tend to like to do is use hex magic, like hexes and buffs, right? So this buffs all units in an area, and this hexes all. So when you combine these two, so when you have your armies fighting in clumps with enemy units, popping these two spells on those same clumps can really allow all your units to give them a significant buff to beat the enemy. But unfortunately with the Vampire Coast, because you won't be using big clumps of melee units, right? You're generally going to be using your magic in different ways. So instead what you'll be doing is, say, using Spirit Leech to take out single characters, or using your spells to get additional firepower. So since you're a ranged faction anyway, especially in combination with your army abilities like the Norse Roar that you saw being used in the battle, it just combines with more of a ranged spellcaster style. You still can use spells like the Law of Vampires, like the Invocation of Nehek, to heal your undead units. But really, you're going to be... And also, raising zombies is actually really useful, because you can raise them as a speed bump in front of your enemies, and then while the enemy's trying to get through the zombies, you can just shoot into them, because they're expendable. Right, so the Vampire Coast does use magic really. I really didn't cover magic in this one but I actually have the ability to recruit vampire fleet captains. I think I might do that in another video. So, like I said, we covered ideal frontline gunnery for mob formations, positioning artillery for safety, and using crab monsters to anchor the flanks, and some hero combos in synergy with the Gunnery Wights. So this was G-Man Gaming and Reviews. Please can subscribe if you haven't already done so, and hit the bell and undeadify the bell icon. I'd love to hear your comments, what you'd like me to do a video on next. What is your favorite unit for the Vampire Coast? What's your favorite playstyle? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? All that good stuff. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and see you in the next one.